All right. G'day. Welcome back to Collectivitis, podcast where we dissect the disease that is collectivism. My name's Pietro, back after another hiatus, this time work-related, not so much holiday-related, is Max. How you doing, Max?
Great, Pietro. Good to be back. Our availability hasn't been kind to each other. Just a lot of opposing schedules lately.
No. And the fans in the comments still screaming for you. So
I
due to
read
popular
all the
demand,
YouTube comments, and yeah, it appears I'm quite popular. It's about time. It's taken 28 years, and I'm finally popular.
read all the YouTube comments. It takes a grand total of 25 seconds to scroll down our 3 YouTube comments. But we appreciate and love them. So thank you to those who do engage with the show. Unironically, yes, please continue doing that. We do love doing that. But you can't complain about Max not being here today because Max is here.
I'm here.
So what we wanted to talk about today, there is a fair bit. We've been focusing away from Australia lately. Last week and the week before, we talked about Javier Milei, obviously winning in Argentina. Makes sense to talk about that. Probably the biggest libertarian thing to happen, this decade. Certainly the hugest win maybe we've ever had. So, that makes sense to talk about. Something I wanted to mention, it hadn't been organized at the time yet, but John Ruddick, who we had on the show last week, the member for New South Wales, was personally invited by Javier Milei to go to his inauguration in Argentina and has flown there. So on a very short notice, they've dipped off and they're now in Argentina. I don't know whether it's exactly happened yet or not. I'm not sure exactly what time and what day the inauguration is happening, but that's exciting that they got personally invited as friends of libertarianism around the world to go to Argentina. So that was pretty cool.
Kind of disappointed we didn't get an invite, to be honest. Come on, Javier.
We should have. Well, I doubt we're on Javier's radar, but I mean, we're on John Ruddick's radar. So we're 2 degrees of separation from Javier Milei.
Exactly.
We're basically within chainsaw swinging range. We need to watch out.
Oh, what a crazy motherfucker. We love him.
Yeah, well, we do love him, and he is crazy. But he's not just crazy. He's I was talking to some people recently about Javier Milei, and something that kind of seems to be fairly consistent is that everyone first comes across him as this crazy nutbag, and then they start watching his more serious videos where he's not swearing and shouting obscenities and whatnot. And they're always very encouraged by the fact that he's remarkably coherent and remarkably well versed. He sometimes he talks as the crazy rock star, sometimes he talks as the economist, and both are kind of equally impressive. So,
well, I think he knows when to turn it on, and that's like a big part of his rise is that he's like great at marketing himself, and that's probably like a lot of the problems with libertarians, as we've spoken about. Because our ideas are quite moderate and appealing, but we just don't get the message out that well. But he knows when to be like, all right, 200% far away. This is my message. Fuck everyone else.
I hope he knows when to turn it on, because if he doesn't, then swinging that chainsaw around in a crowded area might cause some fatalities.
He was actually just chopping down some firewood and then was like, "Oh, it's time to rally. Oh, I've got this chainsaw on me still. Oops."
Yeah, well, very likely considering him. But so we're not talking about Javier Milei today. We have, and it's easy to sort of drift into that. But I wanted to talk about, so again, not looking at Australia necessarily, but there's been more happening overseas than necessarily here. Just recently, the Republican. So first of all, it's very interesting, right? Generally, the right wing is kind of a little bit hard to define because it's a very reactionary. It's a reactionary body. Like it's basically saying no to all the progressivism of increasing the state of the left. And so the right wing varies enormously from, awful tyrannical warmongers such as Nikki Hayley and Christie, all the way to close to something close to libertarianism like Vivek Ramaswami. So in looking at the debates, I think something that is really interesting is that for the first time since Ron Paul was on that stage, we are seeing like the full breadth of the right, and including what the right can be at its best, which is Vivek Ramaswami. And God, he's entertaining. I mean, I don't think you've seen the clips yet. I can't wait to show you. So he's very, very hard on Nikki Haley, like brutal, on the point of like bullying. He's bullying Nikki Haley in front of a global audience, certainly an American audience, in much the same way that Trump is bullying DeSantis. Except Trump is cyberbullying DeSantis with the whole making fun of him for wearing 3-inch heels and that sort of thing, which is very funny. And DeSantis can't seem to handle how to react to that. And thought it was interesting when we spoke to Spike Cohen. He mentioned, and I hadn't necessarily encountered this idea much other than that, but it does make sense. He mentioned that Vivek Ramaswamy is essentially running to be Trump's number 2, is what he thinks. And potentially, if Trump isn't allowed to run, Vivek is positioning himself to be the de facto Trump replacement. And it does make a lot of sense because Ramaswamy is going way harder on Nikki Haley than he is on Ron DeSantis. And I was kind of like, well, why is it that he's going so hard on Nikki Haley? And it's because Trump is going so much harder on DeSantis than he is on Nikki Haley. So he's kind of mirroring Trump. He's attacking the one that Trump's not focused on to kind of say, hey, look, we're aligned here, and position, the Republican base to see him as the potential replacement. So I thought that was interesting.
You think Vivek, sorry, in my opinion, if he is number 1, I don't think he'll win. He's just like not a household name and yada, yada. But is he a higher chance of being elected or being Trump's number 2? What do you think?
You don't think he'll win if he ends up being the Republican nominee?
No.
Okay. And look, that's possible, but it depends also who he's running against. If the Democrats end up running Biden, I think everyone's got a shot against Biden, like regardless. So what was your question? Who does he have a better shot of being number 2?
Do you think he has a better shot of winning the whole election if he's number 1, or being a deputy from president?
It all depends on whether Trump's allowed to run, essentially. Whether Trump is hampered by all these accusations and court cases and things thrown against him. Because I've got the poll numbers here, which are it's comical, right? So Donald Trump, and this is for all the candidates, so it's not just a head-to-head. This is the share of the total voting based on like the most recent polls all combined. Okay. Trump is at 59.3%. So Trump is beating everyone else combined by 9 points.
Yeah.
So like it's outrageous. The next highest is DeSantis on 12.6%. Nikki Haley on 11.6%. Ramaswamy on 4.8%. So like the landscape is unreadable if you're considering that Trump is not there. Like we have no idea.
Yeah, it's really a good point.
And I would imagine a lot of these Trump voters do default to Ramaswamy or DeSantis, hopefully. DeSantis is a little bit less establishment than Nikki Haley. He's very hawkish. He's very, very hawkish, especially on the Israel stuff.
Well, it's interesting because that's what I brought up before. The problem with the way it works in the US with, like people from the same party just going at each other. It's like, because DeSantis would be the best number 2 to Trump, but you've got these little internal battles where Trump is just killing DeSantis. So it's really interesting to see, like, if you remove Trump from the picture, how that vote would play out.
Do you mean DeSantis is the best number 2 to Trump in terms of winning votes or in terms of actually being the best number 2? Because I think Ramaswamy is like the best out of all of them by far, like better than Trump.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean, you say Ramaswamy is like probably the more libertarian one. I like DeSantis based on his COVID response.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you've said, he hasn't really angled towards that in
it's weird.
The Republican primaries.
He doesn't talk about, like, he talks about how good Florida is and what a good job there is, but he doesn't attack Trump on the COVID management, which he is clearly way better on. And you'd think that's the whole reason he's running, is because he got so popular from that. Yeah, that's weird. That is weird, and I don't understand. I don't know if it's a misstep by him. But I mean, he from what I saw of the debate, he did okay. He's just, I don't know. He's not as charismatic as Trump or Ramaswamy, and even Nikki Haley's kind of better at delivering lines than he is. Anyway, let's watch the first clip. So the thing I wanted to look at was just how how clearly Vivek actually genuinely hates Nikki Haley and how much she hates him, which is great because, you know, there's this whole aura sometimes around politics of like, you know, we disagree with each other on these really fundamental things which are causing human beings to die indiscriminately and impoverishing everyone. But but you know, we're going to be civil to each other. We can't be too rude to each other. It's like, no, actually, according to you guys, you believe the other person is doing something that's evil.
Yeah.
And I believe Nikki Haley is advocating for things that are evil. So it's really great to see someone like Vivek, you know, not pull the punches, just go, yeah, you're evil, you're captured, you're corrupt. Not in the clip that I'm going to show, but there's an image of him. He pulls up a piece of paper that just says Nikki equals corrupt later in the debate. So if you Google it, you can find it. Like, it's all over the place now. And just so that even someone getting that photo and that photo being used on like an article or something, that's the crux of his argument.
Yeah.
Even in a picture.
Also, though, think of the meme potential of him holding that. You could just Photoshop any message you want on that sign.
Yeah. He knows what he's doing. He's made himself a blank slate. Anyway, let's watch the clip, the first clip I had to show.
Hamas goes and invades Israel and butchers those people on Putin's birthday. There is no one happier right now than Putin, because all of the attention America had on Ukraine suddenly went to Israel. And that's what they were hoping is going to happen. We need to make sure that we have full clarity that there is a reason, again, that Taiwanese want to help Ukrainians, because they know if Ukraine wins, China won't invade Taiwan. There's a reason the Ukrainians want to help Israelis, because they know that if Iran wins, Russia wins. These are all connected. But what wins all of that is a strong America, not a weak America. And that's what Joe Biden's given us.
I want to say one thing about the tie to Ukraine, if I may. So foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position, with the exceptions of Nikki Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces that she wants to actually fight for. And there's her puppet masters right there. The donors right there that are playing her like the puppet masters.
Hold on. Let me just say something here.
All right.
Wow. And he just doubles down with like the blank face, like this. Oh.
So Christie, the enormous piece of shit, goes on to defend Nikki Haley and call Ramaswami.
I was going to ask who the big boy was. I haven't seen him before.
Yeah. He's awful. He's literally just there to be the establishment candidate and to defend Nikki Haley's on the debate stage. And then Ramaswami doubles down. The clip's very long, but Ramaswami doubles down and goes, now what Christie has shown us just now is that he doesn't know the name of those 3 provinces either. And he gets into, like, that was brutal to watch. She's just sitting there with a blank expression. Yeah. Later on in the clip, she tries to name them while Ramaswamy's talking to kind of interrupt him, and she gets them wrong, and Ramaswamy corrects her on what
wow.
as well.
I'm surprised you didn't like see her like glancing down, like looking at her phone, like Googling Ukraine provinces.
Yeah, well, that's right. I don't know if someone in the crowd holds up a sign to let her know what those provinces are. So yeah, pretty brutal. I think goes without saying that like they are not friendly with each other, Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy.
So is Trump still not turning up to the debates? Just doesn't need to.
Yeah, so they invite Trump to all of those debates. He doesn't turn up. He declines every time, and every time he does so, the numbers surge. So the whole idea of it is very comical. Like when you think about it, it's these 4 candidates who are actually nowhere near being the Republican candidate, like nowhere near, pretending that they're arguing about who's going to be the candidate, while Donald Trump ignores them
Yeah.
and goes and does his own shows.
Well, these four are basically just fighting to work out who's going to be the single person to debate Trump, because surely there'll be a one-on-one debate at the end of it, won't there? Trump versus whoever is going
No.
for that position.
Well, that's not how the primaries work. The primaries should be this, right? It should be, usually it starts with a really wide field of Republicans, of everyone who's nominated. And then as the polls go further and further, some it becomes clear they've got no shot, and the numbers they drop out of the race. And then as if you've got 5% 1 month and then you surge up to 20%, they move you to the center of the stage. And usually at the center of the stage, there are the two most prominent ones. So you can see there as well, like they had DeSantis and Nikki Haley next to each other. And then on the sides were Ramaswamy and Christie, because they're slightly lower. Chris Christie's a fair bit lower. Chris Christie's got no hope. He's there just to make the GOP establishment points. But yeah, so Trump, in theory, like the way they're meant to work is that Trump is meant to be there at the debate. And then if it becomes clear that there's only two really in the race, eventually they're the only two last ones left, as the different states, because the states don't all vote in the primaries at the same time. They kind of do a few at a time.
Okay.
And then if you're still in the race by the time the first states do their primary votes, and you see that you've got no chance with those ones, you drop out of the race at that point, is usually what happens.
Right.
And usually they don't need to get all the way down. Like it becomes clear someone's going to be the nominee well before the end.
What is the date for the primaries? Do we know?
Oh, we do know. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I can't remember, but
it's
soonish.
Yeah. Far out. And like in 11 months' time, we'll have another election. Time's flying every 4 years, and it's just like,
well, I mean, there's so many
yesterday
elections
that Trump
around.
got elected in 2016.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, there's if you look at all the elections that you could possibly look at, there's an election every month. So
yeah,
you can
especially
have
in Victoria, and especially with by-elections at the moment too.
Yeah, well, that's another story. We've got another one of those coming up, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and hopefully get a libertarian candidate on to talk about that as well.
Do we know what the Dems are doing? Like, are they going to run Biden or?
Yeah, so the Dems is super interesting as well, because it's assumed that it'll be Biden, right? Because he's the incumbent. Like you never get rid of the incumbent president if they want to run. But it's clear for the first time ever that this president is not who's actually in charge. So it's like a reality TV show all in one. So like the Democrats, anyone who's on the Democrat side knows they don't want to run Biden if they actually want a chance of winning. Unless they think Biden can win, which seems very unlikely considering his state. Because Biden's obviously very clearly controllable by the establishment. He has no independent thoughts. So they probably don't want to run Biden, and there's a lot of theories going around of ways that he'll eventually step down, and there's lots and lots of people are sharing various sort of paths that the Democratic Party could take. So interestingly, Gavin Newsom, who is the governor of California, I think we talked about this a little while ago, but he is kind of the de facto best of the Democrats. He's awful, obviously, but he's awful because he's a Democrat who's pushing all the big government leftist stuff, but he's very well spoken. Like he's kind of you on par with Barack Obama. Barack Obama, was charming, confident, charismatic, all of that stuff. Started wars and expanded the state enormously. The pain of which we're feeling now, but as far as his
doesn't matter because he sounded and looked good while he was doing it, and that's all that matters.
Exactly, right. So Gavin Newsom is kind of the de facto best chance for the Democrats, and I mean California's going down the toilet as we've spoken about, and he's the governor of California, and yet he's the best chance. So really interestingly, he and DeSantis had a debate recently, just them two, and it's kind of like, well, why are you debating? And you read between the lines, Gavin Newsom is suspecting that he may eventually be the de facto kind of take the place of Biden Democratic candidate. And DeSantis is hoping that Trump gets arrested and not allowed to run, and that he'll be the he'll win the Republican nomination. So it's kind of like they're legitimizing each other by debating the other one, and legitimizing themselves by showing, hey, I'm the representative of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. So a very sly move from both of them. Very weird if it doesn't end up being them two who become the nominees. And also it's like there's this nice parallel of Florida versus California, like this now deep red state versus the deep blue state, and kind of the governors with the very opposite views of the world kind of debating each other. So there's that angle, which makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, that was an interesting little power move that those two fellas played.
Well, when Biden got elected, I tipped that he would be overtaken by Kamala, because I mean she's pathetic and scary.
Yeah,
but that was, I think, why I thought she would take over, because she seems to be a control freak. But yeah, it's obviously I was very wrong, because she is hopeless.
Well, she's like, for Democrats, she's less popular than Biden.
Yeah,
like her approval rating is lower than Joe Biden's, which, like, Joe Biden's approval rating is low among Democrats. Like Democrats generally don't want him. They're talking about how to get rid of him. Cenk Uygur, the guy from the Young Turks, was on Michael Malice's podcast maybe a couple of months ago now, talking about how, like, at all costs there needs to be an actual progressive who's running for the Democrats, not these shells of humans of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Like, they need to get, demolished, kind of. Yeah. That was his argument.
Do we think Hillary will make a comeback?
I very much doubt it. If there's anyone whose personality is not particularly likable, it's Hillary Clinton. Like, she had none of the charisma of Obama. She had none of the likability. Like, she lost that against Donald Trump, who was, on the nose at the time.
Yeah.
For a million different reasons. She lost because she was so unlikable among the swing voters, among the swing states. So on Trump, talking about Trump, this was kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about. It's really interesting watching this debate and watching the way that Vivek will talk about Nikki Haley and the way that the others kind of attack each other. Now, Christie also goes hard at Vivek in a moment, calls him, in the next little bit of that clip, calls him a blowhard and an idiot and all sorts of things. And it's very personal attacks. And as I said, that's something that I really like, because if you guys are truly people who believe that each other's worldviews are horrible, and I believe that a lot of their worldviews are horrible, I want you to actually dislike each other, because you are the creators of these evil policies which cause real death, destruction, poverty, and redistribution of wealth from the middle and the poor to the wealthy. So I want the guy who's on my side, or not necessarily on my side, but who's, I think, is the best of them, to actually dislike the others. And this was not always the case. And it's very, very true that, like, the Republican battlefield, the Republican battleground has been changed by Donald Trump. Because pre-Donald Trump, they didn't used to talk to each other like this. It was very much that sort of respectability, likability. We are kind of, we're all politicians. We're all professionals. We're all serious people, and we may disagree with each other, but at the end of the day, it's all a bit of a laugh, bit of a joke kind of thing. And Donald Trump destroyed that, because Donald Trump came on stage and said, Chris Christie, you're fat. What are you doing, Chris Christie? Go eat a pie. Or there was a really famous moment where Trump was talking about something to do with foreign policy. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but he gets something wrong. He mentions the wrong country or the wrong thing, or something that we don't have. He says we have troops somewhere where we don't have troops, or they have troops. And Rand Paul corrects him. And Donald Trump is wrong. Like, this should be a moment which Rand Paul, like, a kind of zinger that Rand Paul throws back in 2016. And Donald Trump just turns and goes, "That's Rand Paul. He's on 1%. He's a loser. Look at his stringy little noodle hair. Shut up, Rand Paul." And everyone's like, "Yeah, Donald Trump." So like this, he changed the landscape of what the Republican debates were. And it kind of can't go back. I don't know if it could go back once Trump's out of the picture in 20 years' time. But as long as there's people like Ramaswamy pushing that same fight, they have to push back with the same vitriol, because you just lose otherwise.
It's quite bold of Trump to attack people on appearances, like attacking Rand Paul on his hair. attacking DeSantis on his height. Like, you're like, all right, Donny boy, comb over, loves your makeup.
There's also the beautiful. There's this beautiful meme that is, it still makes the round. I see it every now and again where Trump's with Kim Jong-un, and they're in the White House. He's fine, like, they're about to, the most delicate relationship in the world at the time, because North Korea was trying to build nukes, or they had nukes or something, and Trump wanted the de-armament thing, and he's talking to the camera and he goes, "How we look into this camera, we all looking nice and slim and sharp and handsome." And then it pans over and Kim's like this little chubby fat dude. And he's just kind of like stunned, and like he can't understand what Trump's saying necessarily, but like Trump's making fun of him to his face. So yeah, Trump breaks the barriers. But what I wanted to point out, what I wanted to show was this is what the debates looked like in 2012. So the last presidential election prior to Donald Trump. This is the Republican primaries, and I just wanted to show you. There's a video of some of the zingers, the best moments of this debate, and I want to see what you notice. So pay attention, Max.
I'll do my best.
Does Governor Perry deserve any credit for all those jobs that were created in Texas?
Oh, sure.
Go ahead and tell him how much credit he deserves.
Well, well look, I think Governor Perry would agree with me that if you're dealt 4 aces, that doesn't make you necessarily a great poker player.
Admit you were doing pretty good till you got to talking poker.
Congressman Paul, you're from Texas. Does your governor deserve all that credit?
Not quite. I'm a taxpayer there. My taxes have gone up. Our taxes have doubled since he's been in office. Our spending has gone up double. Our debt has gone up nearly triple.
I'm not particularly worried about Governor Perry and Governor Romney frightening the American people when President Obama scares them every single day.
Repeal Obamacare. It really isn't that tough if you try. It's easy to turn around this economy. Just have the backbone to do it.
For Rick to say that you can't secure the border, I think is pretty much a treasonous comment. I didn't hear that.
What we need to do is cut the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, and all these departments and get rid of them.
Some people say that Barack Obama's economy is a disaster. My feeling is it would have to make a dramatic improvement just to be a disaster.
Don't give the President of the United States another $2.4 trillion blank check. You've got.
All right.
So quite respectful, quite lighthearted. Nobody's interrupting each other, and they're all uniting for the common goal, which is to take down Obama and not tear each other to shreds internally.
It's very chummy. It's very chummy. There's I can't remember the name of the dude, the guy with the gray hair towards the end. He says, he likens it to treason. Something that Rick Perry did, and then he kind of smirks at Rick Perry, and Rick Perry's laughing, and they're just having a fun time. And
after that, they've all gone to the pub together and had the best night of their lives.
And so Mitt Romney and Rick Perry, who were clearly the two front runners at the time, the two in the front, and they're just, they're patting each other on the shoulder, they're grinning at each other. Oh, a little jab at you, a little jab at me. Oh, we're all nice Republicans.
Whereas currently you're waiting for security to hold Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy away from each other, like two rabid dogs. Actually, one rabid dog, and that's Vivek, and then Nikki Haley, which is like a little cowering Chihuahua.
Well, Nikki Haley in that debate, in that clip, was carrying, but she's also very on the attack. She's brutal in how she attacks the others. She called Vivek Ramaswamy scum in the previous debate. She said, "You are just scum." Comparing those two clips of the now, even Ron Paul, who had the most controversial, unpopular message at the time, be unthinkable to close all these departments. What are you talking about? Audit the Federal Reserve and the Fed. But even he is being received kind of charming, smart, laughing at it, kind of, very chummy. Chummy is how I would describe their interactions. Which,
in that video too, Ron Paul's reception from the crowd was significantly better than anybody else's.
Yeah, the crowd reception is always it depends where the debate's being held. Like for example, in the it's weird. It's where the debate's being held, and for some reason, like what the makeup of the crowd is for various other factors. Like in the Miami debate, the Republican one for this year, just previously, Ramaswamy was getting, standing ovations every time he spoke and said something to
Is that where he's from?
Hayley. No, making me second guess myself now. He might be from Florida, actually. I can't remember where he's from exactly. It's Ron DeSantis' home state, but it's not Nikki Haley's.
Yeah.
Whereas this debate here was in Alabama. Now, Nikki Haley is from North Carolina. So Alabama, North Carolina, fairly close. The crowd was very supportive of Nikki Haley this time around in this debate. And the crowd for Vivek was much, much, much quieter this time around. So yeah, that's something that you kind of have to take into account.
Yeah, I just did a cheeky little Google. I think he's from Ohio, Vivek.
There you go. He went to Harvard. He's probably been all around the place. He's a successful businessman before he is a candidate. So the other thing I noticed is they're all very good looking. The old Republican, Rick Santorum. Maybe not so much, but Mitt Romney, Rick Perry, both very, very well to do. Newt Gingrich is ugly, but not as ugly as Chris Christie. Yeah, that's kind of what I noticed. Ron DeSantis is not the best looker in this debate round. I don't know. Plus his 3-inch heels thing.
I didn't
but
realize
they all
how
look
short
very
he was.
presidential.
Man. I did not realize how short he was. But even in that footage we watched before, like next to Nikki Haley, he's tiny.
Yeah, maybe she wore extra heels to kind of dwarf him. But yeah,
talking about them being like chummy and stuff. Sorry, it kind of reminds me like these people should be going at each other, and even like opposition leaders, and then like even in Victoria, you see like Dan Andrews and Matthew Guy like smiling in a photo together, like after the election, and it's just like, sorry, shouldn't you guys want to kill each other?
Yeah, well, that's right, and it's kind of. That's what makes me think, and a lot of people think that it's all kind of for show. Like it's all it's all part of the same. They're all doing the same thing effectively. Like here we talk about often, Labor and Liberal. The most important thing to Labor and Liberal is not actually whether they are in government on any one specific term. Like, yes, of course, they really want to be in government and they don't want to lose. But the most important thing to them by far is that the status quo remains, that they're the two major parties.
Yeah.
Because, as long as it's between Labor and Liberal, regardless of how bad you are as the Liberals or as Labor, you just have to wait long enough until the other side is in government and fucks up. I mean, like we talked about how the Liberals were so awful. There was like no chance of Labor has all the states and the federal barring Tasmania. Like, we were talking about how the Liberals are so awful they'll not be in government again because everyone's just wants statism. But Albanese has managed with the Voice and through various other things. Like now they're becoming unpopular, and it looks like the Liberals might be gifted a chance back because at the end of the day, as long as it's this kind of duopoly, it doesn't matter whether you're currently in government or not. As long as you're the only alternative, all you've got to do is wait for their fuck up. And that's partly why they're all so chummy at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I'm sure the Libs will find a way to like still butcher it because they're quite good at that.
And if the Liberals get in, then Labor just have to wait.
Yeah. And as we were talking off air earlier about the wage increase for politicians, like because Queensland just got a wage increase. And to be fair, if I just lost an election and was getting $350K a year for being a loser as a opposition leader, I'd be smiling.
Yeah, I get paid nothing to be a loser. So but yeah, no, and you're right. That's it. And both sides will increase the wages of politicians quicker than the rate of inflation and quicker than the rate of wage increases for everyone else. And they'll keep doing all the main things that are wrong with managing the economy, such as ensuring that central banks operate and are in complete control of the monetary system. And anything that's an actual real change is not going to be considered that. In fact, I think it's very telling that it's the debates that are the least civil and that are the most, have the most anger and kind of actual hatred between candidates are the ones where something's actually on the line. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy is not talking about auditing the Fed or closing the Fed or ending the Fed. I don't believe. Like, he's not anywhere near as good on libertarian, economics as, say, Ron Paul. But he is talking about really good things other than that. He's talking about a lot of corruption and ending, like, the three-letter agencies, or at least, minimizing their control, and talking about a lot of things that are very anti-state. And so it makes sense that Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley genuinely hate each other, because they're talking about actual differences that will make actual changes. At the end of the day, the difference between Rick Perry and Mitt Romney was minimal. The difference between Mitt Romney and Obama was minimal. Like, it was a lefty Democrat versus a lefty Republican. I think Mitt Romney stayed in the Senate up until 2022, and he voted with Biden more often than he didn't. His record. So, like, there's a reason why Mitt Romney and Obama, when they went, because it ended up being Mitt Romney who was the nominee for the Republicans. He ends up winning that. Ron Paul was cheated out of 2012, by the way. Ron Paul had a lot of groundswell support, and he was ignored at a lot of the debates, and he was shunned out, and he was they ignored him and blasphemed against him in many ways to make sure that he didn't win, because Ron Paul was an actual point of difference. Now, at that time, they did it a lot more with the control of the media. There wasn't the sort of ability to podcast and reach large audiences outside of the main media, the mainstream media, and they ignored Ron Paul. So they did it that way. But I mean, Mitt Romney and Obama, when they had their actual debates at the end, they were chummy. Like, they were disagreeing on minutiae in the grand scheme of things. They were both going to expand the state. Mitt Romney campaigned on being more of a war hawk than Obama. Obama campaigned a little bit more on a peace thing, but Obama ended up starting a new war, and Mitt Romney was going to. So, like, I mean, effectively, they might have said slightly different things, but effectively, they were going to do the same things. Whereas I think Ramaswamy is an actual point of difference. And you see, like, in Argentina now, I don't speak Spanish, so I don't know exactly what they were saying to each other at the debates, but I imagine they were much more heated and possibly even showed a little bit of dislike for each other, as I hope that Javier Milei would dislike the leader of the socialist government that's been expanding the state and impoverishing his people. I hope he would dislike him a little bit and say something to him that's a little bit mean.
Yeah, so in the past, I've been like quite confused at like the debates for the primaries, how they attack each other, because I was like, these people should be agreeing on 90% of things, and there should just be small points of difference. But I'm starting to understand why they go so hard at each other now, because, like, these small points of difference are actually quite big. They're not small. So I'm starting to come around to the heated arguments, and I think it would just be perfect, perhaps, if they were a little bit more like complementary for what they agreed on. They don't need to be as chummy as they were in 2012, but, if it was a well-rounded debate and you go hard and you say, I do agree with this person on this point.
Well, that's my point, right? Is that since Trump, that's no longer a thing that needs to happen. They are complementary. Like, for example, Christie, very complimentary of Nikki Haley. He defends her honor against Vivek and says, she's very intelligent. All that Vivek's done is insult her as intelligence.
That's more so them just trying to team up though against Vivek, isn't it?
Well, yeah, well, I suppose, yeah, you're right. That does make sense. But I'm saying there's still room to be chummy when there is not that big ideological difference. But yeah, that's my overall point, I suppose, is that the landscape's changed since 2016 in the US Republican debates.
Yeah,
now, I don't know the Democratic ones. Obviously, Biden, like, they're not having debates at the moment because Biden is the incumbent. So I can't say, but I would imagine they are much more kind of all on the same page. And even so, Bernie Sanders, who is the most radical of the left of the last few election cycles, who has the most, outside of the mainstream point of view, he got largely cheated out of both, the last one and the one before by the Democratic establishment. They hampered him to make sure that he wasn't the nominee against both Hillary and against Biden. And both times after he was cheated out of it, similar to what was done to Ron Paul, but both times Bernie Sanders endorsed the main Democratic candidate, which Ron Paul never did. Ron Paul never endorsed Mitt Romney. In 2012, he refused because Mitt Romney is not acceptable to Ron Paul, whereas Biden or Hillary is still acceptable to Bernie because at the end of the day, he has 3 houses and pretends to be for the working class.
Absolute fraud. Talking about the duopoly, do you reckon RFK, like he won't get elected, but do you think he's a chance to properly shake things up there?
Hard to say with RFK. I know he puts a lot of kind of cherry-picked polls up, like he's the most popular among younger voters. It's like, well, why are you showing me this exact demographic? Are you
it's like
30 other demographics?
30 to 44. He was like had a higher vote, but it was also like localized to some area, and it was like, well, this is kind of useless information, buddy.
Yeah, like anyone can make themselves kind of look good with that. I think RFK has a lot of support, and RFK, you know, I've got RFK's book right behind me, the real Anthony Fauci. RFK was great on the COVID stuff. But
do you read the book in his voice, like that dying chainsaw?
Oh my god, that would be agony. Anthony Fauci. No, I don't read it in his voice.
It's honestly, it just sounds like a chainsaw idling. You've got Harvey Milei swinging the chainsaw, and you've got RFK just he's about to run out of petrol.
Yeah. No, RFK, I think RFK very much hamstrung himself, I think, when he came out strong on the Warhawk stuff with Israel, because he'd been really good on the Ukraine-Russia war and then went full Warhawk. And a lot of his support was this kind of libertarian-esque, very anti-war support, which, like, I remember reading the tweet that he made where he talked about how, you know, we have to turn Gaza into a parking lot. I'm paraphrasing whatever he said. And all of the comments, like bar none, were, this sucks. You've shown your true colors. We thought you were different.
I was about to say that, but this, like, the Israel-Palestine war has really shown a lot of people's true colors. Like, a lot of people have just come out of the woodwork and shown what they really think.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very divisive one because the left tends to be anti-war, and a lot of the left is anti this war. But the big donors to Biden are from the Israel lobby. So Biden's kind of skirting this dangerous line, or Biden or whoever's actually in charge of him, of like trying to keep your actual grassroots supporters happy, like the squad, who are all very anti-war there, but also have to support Israel no matter what, because the big lobbies are on my side and my biggest donors are there. So he kind of doesn't want to offend either, and therefore they're both unhappy with him. It's really split the left, and I've heard this argument a lot that this war, the longer it goes, the more it hurts the Democratic case for presidency. But,
and you know, that's regardless of RFK's, you know, views on war that have all of a sudden changed, I think he'll probably pick up a lot of those Democrat voters who, you know, have been lost by Biden, and they'll still never vote Republican. So that's probably where RFK will pick up quite a few.
There's a good chance. And there's a good chance he picks up some Republicans as well. But I think, you're probably right. He does take more.
Is he debating anybody, RFK, or not? Obviously, like, he's an independent, so there's no primaries to debate in. But is he?
Yeah, I think once there's the two nominees, I think you have to have, like, the rule, and they can always change these, but the rule was always if you had 15%, you got to the debate stage. So I think if he maintains like 15% nationwide at the point where Trump and whoever, you know, it could be anyone really on both sides, get the nomination, then I think he gets allowed at the debates.
Who needs 15% nationwide when you can have 40% of people aged between 30 and 44? Just have a debate, and that's the audience. People aged 30 and 44.
That's exactly. And then you win. If I got to pick only 5 people who were allowed to vote, I reckon I'd win, you know, presidential nomination. All right, let's wrap it up there. So for those of you who don't already, you can follow us on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and Twitter or X. Please do like the videos, give us a review, give us a rating, leave us a comment. We do like hearing from you. And we will catch you next time.
Catch you later.
Peace.